What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with some more NFL DFS picks and lineup advice, this time for the Thanksgiving slate, the three-gamer on FanDuel and DraftKings, lineup strategies, tips, picks, everything you need to ignore your family and build fantasy lineups for DFS contests. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, joined by the architect of the lineup builder at OccupyFantasy.com, as well as a notorious short slate crusher in DFS. It is Jack at DFS_magic_. Jack, happy Thanksgiving, man. What's up?
Hey man, happy Thanksgiving to you as well. Looking forward to what is this? Maybe our fourth consecutive video on this topic, I think.
Yeah, I
And I
think
think
so.
every single one has had Josh Allen in it.
It has, dude. I feel like he's on a disproportionate number of these short slates. So we get another one. Another one. Did you? Your one of your wins was with Josh Allen, though, right?
Yeah, that was the one with swapping off Devontae Adams. Yep. So it can be done. You can win with Josh Allen. Take some luck for sure, but we'll definitely get into how you might try to do that.
Absolutely. So what we'll do in this video, we'll talk about general three-game, these other short slate variety strategies, how you build lineups, what you normally do, how it might be different this year. We'll talk about some injuries that impact the slate as well. Talk about team-specific strategies for the slate, and then at the very end, we'll stick around for our favorite lower owned, trashy type plays that can help win you the biggest GPPs. Now, for those who don't know, if this is your first year tuning in to these videos with the short slates with Jack, you should know that not only has he won single game contests, he has won a big 2-game GPP, a 3-game GPP, and a 4-game GPP over the past few years. So the dude knows what he's talking about when it comes to short slate strategy. And he created the lineup builder, so he knows all the best ways to use the lineup builder to stack it up and win these types of slates. So, Jack, not too much pressure on you this year, but generally, what are we looking to do on shorter slates? And given the struggles for most this year when it comes to stacking on regular main slates in 2022, how do you think this year changes our strategy?
Yeah, Ryan, you were pointing out those statistics to me before the video about just the less passing, frankly, right? In the league, like what'd you say, the lowest since 2009 or something like that?
Yep.
And yeah, I think obviously that if teams aren't throwing, it's lower scoring. It's gonna be harder for those game stacks to survive. But the reason it's so strong on short slates generally is there's just a lot fewer other players you have to compete with, and so that correlation factor of a team getting up and pushing the other team is a lot more powerful. And so we definitely still think it's a good strategy, even though it hasn't been quite as effective this year. And I think again we'll get into some of that. Any particular like team specific things you're seeing with like run pass rates or that stand out to you before we get into each one individually?
Yeah. So what makes this season even more gross? So we talked about you mentioned the least number of passing attempts on average by the entire league per game since 2009. This is the lowest yards per completion in the history of the league, which is actually insane to think about. But only 9 of the 30 teams are passing above, and I guess this shouldn't be surprising given the statistics we just laid out. Only 9 of the 30 teams in the league are passing above expectation based on down and distance. Fortunately, 2 of those teams are all in the slate, but Jack, that also means just 2 of the 6 are passing above expectations, which means they have a higher likelihood of carrying a bigger game stack. That would obviously be Buffalo. That would obviously be, I guess not obviously, but Minnesota is the other one here. And even those 2 teams, Jack, right? Minnesota's missing their left tackle. We'll talk about. We saw what happened in their game against Dallas last week when he left early, and Buffalo with Josh Allen's elbow. They ran a lot last week, and he just hasn't been as effective recently. So those are the 2 teams that, based on their run pass ratios, would have me stack them up. But again, there are concerns for every team on the slate.
So we were trying to go down the list, and we'll get into it. But you think, oh well, this team has offensive line issues. Let's play this other team, and then we're like, oh, they do too, and then oh, they do too, and then it just kind of snowballed. So at some point, I guess it just evens out a little bit. But maybe with that we can get into the how do you want to tackle this? You want to go kind of game by game?
Yeah, we could go game by game. And I guess just really quickly before we get into that, for those who haven't read the strategy guide or watched these videos before, how big are the stacks you're typically making, especially for some of the higher powered offenses? And then if you're playing some of these trashier quarterbacks on these 3-game slates, what type of stacks are you creating generally?
Yeah, great question. I think typically we look at for kind of a high upside quarterback like Allen or Dak Prescott, we go for a four man stack. So that would be quarterback and three teammates. At least two of them would be pass catcher or running back. Certainly you want at least one pass catcher. Oftentimes or most of the time, I think we say all three of those would be offensive players. We do get into stacking the defense. It's not really a quarterback correlation, but I think that's just something more like you wouldn't necessarily want to block it on a short slate. And then certainly, on DraftKings, right? There's no limit. You can play up to seven people. So FanDuel, you're capped at four. Brian, I think have you seen a 5-man stack win on DraftKings
We've seen
before?
6-man stacks win, including the
Okay.
defense. So it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like Brian mentioned with the lineup builder, it allows you to basically, tweak your min maxes however you want to try to get, a specific distribution of those. Um, and, like you asked about the weaker quarterbacks, I think certainly you want to be playing one pass catcher with a quarterback. Is Mac Jones going to support two wide receivers and a tight end? I don't think so. I have seen Colt McCoy 4-man stack win a 4 p.m. slate once, so it
It is
can
possible.
happen. I don't know that it's a positive expected value play though.
Right.
And then the middle ones, right, are kind of the tougher ones like Kirk Cousins or Jared Goff. Like I think either is viable in that case.
For sure. And even so, like with Buffalo being 10-point favorites, Dallas being 10-point favorites, Jack, I think that leans even more towards using a defense in your stack, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you think about almost kind of that showdown mentality, like if the team that scored a bunch of points is winning, the other team probably has to throw a lot, and that's what creates turnovers and sacks. You could get some correlation that way. And typically on the main slates, you think you don't want to play because you don't want to play anyone against the defense, but with so few games, it's almost inevitable that an optimal lineup will have a defense versus at least one player. We've even seen it against quarterbacks. That's not something you necessarily need to shy away from either.
Yep, exactly. Just be smart about how you're doing it, right? You don't want to play four guys against the defense. We do see that win too, though, I guess, and that's generally when you're punting a defense. So
Yeah.
again, lots of strategies here. Make sure you check out the strategy guide at acrobatfantasy.com. It's also linked in the description below. All right, Jack, let's go game by game here. Buffalo and Detroit. Buffalo missing a couple pieces on defense that really hasn't stopped them from doing much. Or really hasn't hindered their defensive performance really over the last few weeks. Detroit side, they're missing their two offensive guards, which is not great as a 10-point underdogs here. DJ Chark returned last week at wide receiver for Detroit. Only played 11 snaps, I believe. But reporters do expect him to ramp up a little more this week in his second week back in return from injury. Josh Reynolds is questionable. So all these guys that I just mentioned for Detroit are going to be sub 10%, maybe even sub 5%. So those are your trashy plays there. But I guess just in general, Jack, what are you looking at for this game? Allen super stacks. Really, the most prohibitive thing about Allen, besides his ownership though, is his salary. Like he's 9,500 on DraftKings and 8K. Or sorry, 9,500 on FanDuel, 8K on DraftKings, which is a pretty significant gap between he and Dak Prescott.
Yeah, I think we have to start with Josh Allen, right? He's obviously the top play on the slate. He's going to be one of the most owned players on the slate. Interestingly, last Thanksgiving we had Dak Prescott and Josh Allen, and that in that contest we actually saw ownership pretty close, and that was even with Dak Prescott was not quite as cheap as he was in comparison to Allen. However, as you know, we looked at the team environments last year, and Buffalo's projected for a lot more points this time around. So we're looking at Allen, 40, maybe 45% both sites. Dak somewhere 20 to 25 range. So right off the bat, you got to. We always talk about you can play chalk, right? But if you do that, you got to get different. And I think would you agree that if you're playing Allen, that definitely counts as playing super chalk, and you're going to have to make real effort to get different somewhere.
Yeah, so you either have to make your stack super weird with Allen, or I think the easier way, what we generally see is sub 20% guys, even sub 10% guys. We normally see 1 to 2 per lineup in winners on these types of slates. Sometimes more, but Jack, more than that, once you get 3 to 4 range, now you're really drawing pretty thin. Like some weird stuff has to happen for a ton of those types of guys to enter the optimal lineup or the winning lineup.
Yep, absolutely. And that's something where when you use the lineup builder, we on these kind of slates, I don't know about you, but I always kind of make like a min one, usually like I think like you said, max two kind of rule with under a certain ownership percentage. That helps you kind of keep that. But if you're hand building, definitely something to keep in mind. You don't want to be clicking in like three or four guys that are 4% owned. It's not likely to win. Um, what do you think about the bringbacks? Right, we talked about you want to stack three or four guys with Josh Allen. Do you think that's optimal here? Do you think that the field is going to do that as much as they should or more than they should? Any particular Detroit players you would target or stay away from?
I think just based on ownership, we'll see a lot of 4-1s with Amon-Ra St. Brown being the bring back. So bringing it back with anyone else or in addition to St. Brown, I think is very key. I looked at a ton of data over the past couple of years, and the most common types of stacks that win both small field and large field contests are of the 4-2 variety. So, and we know the field doesn't play it as often, especially in games like this. And I think there's different ways you can play it, right? You can play DeAndre Swift, you can play Jamal Williams, you can play any of these Detroit receivers that you like. Because again, if you look at last week when they got up with Allen's elbow against the rush defense, they got running the ball better. It's very possible if they get up multiple scores here that they're running out the clock in the second half. In order for them not to be doing that and reach their ceiling, which you're going to need on their prices, you need Detroit to put up some resistance, and that means players on their side are scoring. So I think you have to, if you're going to play Allen, you got to run him back in some variety because people are going to play 4-0 stacks with Buffalo's defense. We've seen that all the time.
Yep, and I think we talked about this as well. Buffalo typically is a team that will aggressively throw the ball even when they're up. But since Allen's injured, I think you mentioned that their rush rate was up a little bit, especially as they started to get up in that game. So I think we're saying definitely prioritize playing those Detroit players with Allen. It's more unique. It's more likely to win. And it's just kind of there's a good opportunity as Brian went through that list. There's a bunch of guys in that sort of 5 to 20% ownership range. That you can use to get different. Real quick on Detroit, what do you think about this running back situation? I'm just looking at snap counts last week. Jamal Williams 48, Swift 31, Jackson 37. What do you make of it? Yeah.
I mean, if Jamal Williams is going to continue to score 1-yard touchdowns at an insane rate, right? I mean, his price is up. Swift is the guy I would be interested in, especially with lower ownership. Hopefully more pass catching. Jackson, I would not be interested in, but again, we've seen weirder stuff happen, right? Jackson at 5,200, I think he's not going to be the highest scorer at the position. He probably won't even be a top 2 scorer at the position. If you play someone like Justin Jackson, I think you would have to use almost all of your salary for other running backs to get priced out.
Yeah, and that's a good point. We didn't talk about the salary yet. Sorry, the strategy. And we can do that now. So, certainly on showdown slates, we like to leave salary to get unique. On the main slates, we know we need to use all the salary. These three gamers are kind of an interesting one. Even 2 game slates, we typically like to leave a little bit. So I think, like Brian's saying, the 3 gamer, you just have to look at your lineup and look at the players and say, can that player be the highest scorer at the position? And if yes, then it's probably okay to leave some salary. If not, then you probably want to try to use it. Is that kind of how you look at it, Brian, on these 3 gamers?
Yeah, I think you have to because, like, not that you would ever leave this amount of salary, but a very simplistic example is if you play Jared Goff, is he going to outscore Josh Allen? 99% no. But he can be the optimal quarterback because he is $2,600 cheaper. So if you're not that you would ever leave $2,600 on the table, but you would not want any golf lineups with $2,600 or more because those could theoretically upgrade to Allen. You want lineups where you can't upgrade to that next guy who's more likely to outscore that player.
Yeah, and one thing, looking at the running back pricing here that you can do too is you can kind of look at the price ranges of different guys. So, you've got Cook and Barkley, pretty expensive. Like clearly the most expensive guys, like 1K higher than you got another tier down that's Pollard Stevenson, and then below that you've got this mush of like 5,500 to 6K guys. So you can kind of look in that price range and say, okay, how many guys in this price range can my player outscore? And that's another way to think about like how crazy do you want to get with these lineups. Like for example, if you play Damian Harris, right, he's probably gonna be like 3% owned. You got Swift, Elliott, Jamal Williams, and Singletary all in that exact price range. Like, do we really think Damian Harris is gonna outscore all 4 of those guys?
It's a low percentage,
not.
right? Low percentage for sure. But I guess you just think about it. How does it work? Singletary splits work with James Cook. Zeke is dust. Jamal Williams doesn't get 3 1-yard touchdowns. Like that's how it happens. Harris looked pretty decent last week, but these are the types of stories you have to tell. If those other guys fail, how does it happen? And that's how you build your lineup.
Yep.
Cool.
All right. Any other notes on Detroit Buffalo, or should we hit the next one?
Final thing I want to ask you is Dawson Knox, projected to be the highest owned tight end. That is horrific. We cannot let the field get away with that.
It is gross. It's one of the first places I would look to get different. I think you mentioned Allen's price. Knox will be a easy click in for people. Optimizers will find him. And, I think if you think about Knox's ownership of 45, he might even hit 50%. Think of how many Josh Allen lineups will have Dawson Knox,
True.
right? Like 75%. It's going to be something nuts. So, even if you did want to play like a 4x1 Allen with Amon-Ra, you could leave out Knox, for example, and that would be another way to get different.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to Giants in Dallas. Giants missing their top 3 offensive linemen, center, right tackle, right guard, missing their backup right guard. So they're starting their 3rd string right guard, and they're missing their center and right tackle. Not great when you're coming to town to face Micah Parsons and company. Big reason why they're 10-point underdogs here. Giants also without Wan'Dale Robinson on injured reserve with a torn ACL. That's interesting to me. Giants also missing their top 2 cornerbacks, both outside corners. So really, really healthy coming into this game, Jack. But what is interesting to me is, okay, that helps Dak maybe if they're going to pass against these backup corners. But also the Giants receivers, extremely low owned outside of Darius Slayton. Some opportunity there for some trash plays that can differentiate your lineup.
Yeah, you cued me into this too, but Lawrence Cager listed as a tight end on DraftKings. He's actually a wide receiver on FanDuel, and so you've basically got a $2,700 tight end playing what's his snaps last week? I'm looking right now.
80%, 78%.
Yeah,
Like
so you got a full time basically wide receiver listed as a tight end that's going to be 10% or less. And whether you're stacking this game or not, we think this game is a great source. This team in particular, the Giants, are a great source of like a low-owned play to get different, right? You've got these cheap receivers that kind of no one knows how it's going to shake out, so they're just staying away. It's a great source. How do you approach Barkley? I think we have him at around 30%. Typically on these 3-gamers, you see the chalk plays like 50%. So he's lower than you would expect, as just a standard like easy chalk play. But obviously, you mentioned the line injuries. Are you thinking kind of match the field, over the field, zero? What are your thoughts on Barkley?
I've been under on running backs in general in this price range, just based on how pricing has shaken out all year long, and I think it's tough to get overweight on him given the situation. So yeah, I think I'll be under. I haven't really built any lineups yet, but it's again, if a running back's going to come from this range, I know Pollard was great last week, but if he's going to get 60% of the snaps, 60% of the touches, is it going to be worth 8,500? I mean, that's if he gets the touchdown variance, sure, and he has always gotten the touchdown variance, but that price also stood out to me.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's a tough one to swallow. On the other side, yeah, so I think you kind of hit it, right? Pollard. I don't. He must be more expensive on FanDuel, but DraftKings you still get a pretty decent discount. He's like 6,600, whereas Barkley's 8K. So
sorry, yeah, Pollard is 8,500 on FanDuel.
Yeah, so this is a case where FanDuel actually has probably the sharper pricing.
Yeah.
But do you see this as a chance to get under on Pollard if at that price and chasing that game log? The field's going there 40-50%. Do you think this is an opportunity to get different by maybe leaving him off more than the field?
Yeah, and just hope that it goes to the passing game more, right? You play more Gallup, more CeeDee Lamb, Noah Brown even.
Or he doesn't catch 80-yard touchdowns on like 3rd and 19 or whatever that play was.
Or that. That's not even that much to ask for. So if you're stacking this game, can Dak support 4x1s, even though they've been running the ball a lot lately and in general all season? And what type of stack, if any, you're a psycho, so I know you'll play Daniel Jones, but like how would you stack Daniel Jones?
Yeah, so Dak, I think kind of the same mentality as Josh Allen, right? We think probably they need a push. I don't know the numbers, but I assume Dallas is pretty happy to just hand the ball off when they're winning. So you want to be playing Giants runbacks. I think we gave you some of those lower owned receivers, tight end that you could use. Daniel Jones is a tough one. Like Brian mentioned, the offensive line is bad, but he can run, right? And we know, Brian, that rushing quarterbacks on these short slates can actually be the optimal. So, you said Jared Goff can't outscore Josh Allen. Can Daniel Jones outscore Josh Allen? What do you think?
I guess he could, right? You need at least one rushing touchdown. You need Allen to have a floor game. He can. But this also brings me to my other point that you and I were discussing a little bit earlier is if you play these cheaper quarterbacks like Jones, like Goff, they probably can't support 2, 3, 4 pass catchers like Allen, like Dak. So if that's the case, let's just say you're 1-1, like 2-1 stacking the Giants. You play Jones, you play Darius Slayton, you run it back with CD, maybe a couple guys from Dallas, right? But then this higher scoring Buffalo Detroit game, you play a 2 or 3-1 stack from there, or a 3-2 stack from there. The idea being that first game scores really well, but the quarterback gets priced out. And Jones scores close enough, or even not even that much closer, but just enough to justify the 2K in price savings on FanDuel.
Yeah, and he is 2,500 less than Allen on DraftKings. So yeah, if he can get in the end zone with his legs, I mean that will make it probably very likely that you could find an optimal lineup, with him instead of Allen, even if it has multiple bills. By that token, since you mentioned it, do you think is it generally okay for people to play multiple skill players from a team when they're not using that team's quarterback, or how do you generally approach that?
Yeah, I think you can, unless it's a pretty terrible quarterback, right? Like, are you going to play, especially for like the lower guys on the depth chart? Like, are you really going to play DJ Chark and Josh Reynolds in the same lineup without Goff? No, you definitely should not. Are you going to play Isaiah Hodgins from the Giants and Richie James without Daniel Jones? You shouldn't, right? These types of situations. So I think but like you would play Steph Diggs and Gabriel Davis together without Josh Allen because there are conceivable ways that they both get there and Allen gets priced out. So I think it depends on the team and it depends on the type of lineup that you're building.
Yeah, and the final note on that is just we always mention this in these short slates. That's an example of like your lineups are going to look kind of gross. You're going to say like, oh, there's like a Buffalo running back and two receivers, but there's no quarterback. Like that doesn't make sense. But that's just you kind of have to take some medicine on that because those lineups do win, and there are real stories why that happens.
And they've been winning on the main slate too, so it shouldn't look any different on the short slate this year.
Yeah. All right. Any other notes on this game? We kind of hit the Giants tight end as a wide receiver on DraftKings. I think Schultz, 30%. That's sort of about where he should be. I don't really feel
I feel
anything about
strongly.
that.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah.
I think that's it. The only other I mentioned Isaiah Hodgins for the Giants. He and Kenny Galladay were splitting outside snaps last week. Galladay is still dust too, so if anyone, I would choose Hodgins here. 3K again. Richie James is 3,400. When Wandale has been out, he's been the slot guy. So I think we can just expect him to step right in again. So Richie James, when he's been in, he's been targeted. So I think Richie James is one of the better plays that's going to go way overlooked.
Write this down. Get those sub 20% receivers in, guys.
Yes, sir. All right, let's move on to New England and Minnesota. Another game with a super low total. I think it's 42.5 here. Cousins will be without his left tackle, Christian Darrisaw, who we saw was a very disastrous absence after he left early against Dallas when they lost 65-3 or whatever it was. Really glad Minnesota showed up last week against Mac Jones and New England, who's happy to run the ball. So another gross game. But Jack, Minnesota is one of those two teams on the slate that passes more than they're expected to based on down and distance. So they have to be appealing for that reason alone.
They are, and I think this is the game theory game, right? Like, who in their right mind wants to stack this game, right? It's like low total, the projections suck. Kirk Cousins just got blown out. Mac Jones never throws the ball. No one wants to do it, but it's a 3-game slate. Chaos can happen. Like all sorts of things can happen, right? And like Brian said, that Cousins is a guy that actually they will throw the ball. Another thing we have with Cousins is like a very clear target tree, right? It's not like the Giants or they're probably the best example, right? Where you kind of it's spread out, you don't know where the ball's going to go. But like
Definitely.
with the Vikings, we know where the ball's going to go, right?
Yep. Exactly. Going to Jefferson. It's going to Thielen. It's going to Hawkinson now. Now that he's there. Osborne as another cheap option. So we know where it's going. And the other thing, if you're psycho enough to play Mac Jones on the other side, the saving grace is he is the cheapest quarterback on the slate. So again, ways that he doesn't have to score extremely well, Jack, and end up in the optimal, just because he is the cheapest option.
Yeah, and another way to think about this, we have Jefferson projected, in the kind of 30% range. Diggs is 50. Like, can Justin Jefferson outscore Diggs? I don't know what those odds come out to, but to me, that should be much closer to even money. Kind of regardless of matchup, right? Just
Absolutely.
just based on their talent, the amount of targets they see, the value of the targets they see. So clear game theory there. What about the New England side? Are you even going to entertain the quarterback? If so, how would you play it?
Oh man, it's tough. I think it's like it would be like Jones or Goff even. But even though I think Goff can support more, it's just that they have five receivers that they're playing. Jacoby Myers is the clear target. They have two tight ends that they're running. So it's really tough to pinpoint in like a single entry or small field lineup what you would do. And I wouldn't touch it in small field anyways. But MME, I think if you're going to play Matt Jones, he's going to be 5% owned. You play 10, 15%, or however crazy you want to get. You just mix and match. I would probably max of two pass catchers with him. At most, do a three-man New England stack. But I don't know. I mean, and even then, you can include Ramondre Stevenson because he's catching passes, and let's say New England scores 24 points. Ramondre and Mac Jones account for 100% of the touchdowns. That could be enough, depending on how the other games shake out.
Yeah, I have to look at the FanDuel pricing. I have DraftKings up, but I think what we're telling you is that's a tougher one to swallow. And if you look at DraftKings pricing, right, you got Mac Jones 5,100, Daniel Jones 55, Kirk 56. So you got a rushing quarterback and a quarterback who throws the ball a lot, basically the same price and
Right.
basically the same ownership, right? So it's almost like
There's no
it
reaching
may be
over there.
too crazy, right? Yeah, like if Kirk Cousins was 25% owned and Daniel Jones was 1,500 more expensive, then maybe, but you kind of don't have to be that crazy to find uniqueness with the quarterback spot at least.
I mean, on FanDuel, Jones is 65, Golf 69, Cousins 74, Jones 75. So there's an appreciable difference compared to DraftKings.
Yeah, are you touching those New England pass catchers as run backs if you do play Cousins?
You have to, right? I think you have to. Jacoby
Yeah.
Myers is easy. Parker gets downfield at least, high average depth of target. Thornton, that we've seen him design plays for. Aguilar randomly gets deep balls. Kendrick Bourne's probably the guy I wouldn't touch, but it is a short slate, which means he's definitely scoring a touchdown. So you probably have to include him in your player pool.
Or if you have a lineup that's about to win, that's Aguilar, right? No,
Yeah.
it's Aguilar's your guy. Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Sorry to sorry to revisit that one.
It's okay.
Um, so this one sets up well to go back to your point about 4x2, right? If you play Cousins, because if that game goes off, the odds that Ramondre Stevenson's involved is probably almost 100%, and then you throw in one of those low-owned, cheap New England
Yeah.
wide receivers, and there's your two run backs, right? So that game sets up pretty nicely. Do you stack Cousins times four based on what we've talked about?
I think you can. I think you very easily can. Jefferson, Thielen, Hawkinson, or Dalvin, KJ Osborne. I think you totally can, right? And I was just thinking as I was talking about Dalvin Cook, Alexander Madison is a backup. 3 game slate is probably too thin to play any of these backups, right? I'm talking Matt Breida, Alexander Madison, those types of guys, right? We're not really playing those. Maybe 2 gamer, but 3 gamer is probably too thin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. And I like we mentioned Kirk Cousins kind of that middle ground. You certainly can play a four back stack. You don't have to. You could play a three, and that's what's cool about the lineup builder is you can actually set like Minnesota to min three, max four, and then just let the lineup builder, figure it out based on all your other rules, the Occupy Fantasy Index, all that. So that's an example of how you could use that. Whereas someone like Josh Allen, we probably want to set to min four, max four, or DraftKings 5, 6, whatever, however crazy you want to get.
Yes, exactly. Honestly, I think on DraftKings, we'll close it out here. I would consider 5 and 6 man stacks with Allen, assuming that game is the highest scoring. We know people aren't going to 5 man and 6 man stack them as often as they should, especially on a slate like this. I don't think they will. So I think if I'm playing this and I'm playing both sides, I would love to get over the field on Allen on DraftKings and super stack it up. And on FanDuel, I would be willing to take chances that he's not the highest scorer and play these other guys instead.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense to me. So I think we've given a few different ways you can play Allen to get different, but yeah.
Okay. As we close it out, I'll give a play. Jack, you give a play. Your favorite guy that's under 10% owned for large field tournaments.
All right, let me sort. Under 10. All right, I gotta go wait on the list for this one.
I mean,
Are you going first or am I
yeah,
going?
I already said him once. It's going to be Richie James for me. So I'll say Richie James, super cheap. Should be the starting slot receiver. Should play nearly every passing snap when there's 3 receivers on the field.
I am going to go. This is a risky one, but I'm gonna go Swift. I mean, I have him at 5%. Like, who's playing DeAndre Swift when Singletary is the same price?
Right.
But Singletary's splitting carries, with Cook. If the lines are trailing, you could just get a bunch of dump offs. Yeah, I mean, he seems like a guy that could be, a top three highest score at the position on a short slate. At 10% at running back too, which is kind of rare.
Yep. And he doesn't have to play all the snaps because of the
No.
way he's used. And so I
Yeah,
think people will shy away from him because of that. But on this type of slate, he can easily get there
especially DraftKings, right, with the PPR.
for sure. All right, guys, that'll do it. We appreciate you tuning in as always. If you like what you saw, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. If you made it this far, you probably like it. So just make sure you subscribe, get notified when we go live, upload new videos. It's heading into December, which means it's short slate season, which means you'll see more of Jack and me doing these types of videos. So if you like it, make sure you subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. We appreciate it. Lets us know to continue to do these videos. Any questions? I know it's Thanksgiving on Thursday, but I'm a degenerate. I'll be monitoring the YouTube channel. So make any comments or questions on YouTube. Best way, though, is to join our Discord server, acrobatfantasy.com/Discord, where you can chat with other members of the community. You can talk with us, ask us lineup builder questions, which, by the way, it is up and running for Thanksgiving already with projected ownership, build up to 300 lineups. The model's up. The plug will be up tonight. All that is linked in the description below. Jack, final thoughts.
Just go have fun and please, if you're gonna invest money in the slate, be around a late swap. We didn't talk about it a lot today, but late swapping has won both of us, a lot of money over the years. People aren't going to do it. Make sure you just, set up even 20 minutes, just flip through lineups on your phone, look for the ones that are the best and just try to look at players that are, other users that are ahead of you that maybe have the same amount of minutes and just try to think about, if you're leading, you can play chalk and you should play chalk. If you're trailing other people, you should not play chalk. You should pivot and play something lower on for going to win. So that's the biggest thing. If you don't think you have time, I wouldn't throw a ton of money at the slate and just go have fun with your family.
For sure. Real quick, at least half of your short slate wins have been a result of late swap, right?
The 3-gamer was, and
In the 4-gamer, playoff one.
4-gamer, I didn't actually swap, but
We talked about swapping,
we talked
right?
about it.
Okay.
Yes, but you still go through the process. I cost myself 20K on Sunday by swapping, so it doesn't always work, but it's still still something you need to do, and most people don't do it. It's a huge edge.
Absolutely. So we'll close it out there. So Brian and Jack from Fantasy and DFS Magic, appreciate you listening. Happy Thanksgiving.